In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to knit a sweater, a raglan sweater to be exact, a one-piece raglan sweater with wavy pattern. You're watching part 2 of this tutorial. If you haven't watched part 1, click here on the info box, or you can find the link in the description of this video. So here's my stitch marker on the right needle that indicates me the beginning of the round, and now we're ready to start a row of decreases. Take your 2 stitches on your left needle and insert your needle like that, wrap it around and knit 2 together. Now we're going to repeat the same thing. So here are the 2 stitches. We're going to knit them 2 together. Wrap it around, just like knitting, but 2 of the stitches. Now we're going to just knit. Then knit 2 of the stitches together. Now we're going to knit 2 together these 2 stitches. And now we're going to knit. So our pattern is knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and then knit. So now we're going to knit 2 together. And then one more time knit 2 together. And then knit without any decreases. So from this point just continue making knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and then knit, and repeat until the end of the row. But keep in mind that you have to have in total an even number of stitches. So if you end up making this pattern and then you need to make an even number, you can make 2 knit but without knit 2 together, so that in total you'll have an even number. I'm currently near the end of my row, and here's a stitch marker, and I decided to count all of the stitches starting from the stitch marker. So starting from this stitch all the way through until this point, I have 63 stitches. And now I have 6 stitches left here on my left needle, and now I'm going to plan out to make sure that I will have an even number of stitches in the end of this row. Since I only have 6 stitches left on my left needle, I decided to make 3 pairs of knit 2 together. So I will have 64 stitches, 65, and then 66. So 66 is an even number, and I'm satisfied with that number. If you're making a different number of stitches on your needles, just make sure that the number will match your waistline circumference. The reason why I'm suggesting the number of stitches that would match your waistline circumference is because this bit is a cropped sweater, and the ribbing would be easy to tuck into your high-waisted jeans or pants or culottes and other bottoms. So now I'm going to make knit 2 together. And then the next 2, and now the last pair of stitches. So now I have in total 66 stitches on my needles, and here's my stitch marker. I'm going to put it on my right needle. Now we're going to take our 5mm needles and start making a 1x1 rib. So here's the first stitch of the round. It is a 7mm needle, and I'm holding in my right hand 5mm needle. I'm going to make the first knit stitch, and then I'm making a purl stitch. The next one is a knit stitch, and then purl. So by now I think you know how to make a rib stitch. Just make knit 1, purl 1, and then repeat until the end of the row. So here's the last stitch of my row, and I'm making it a purl stitch. So your last stitch should always be a purl stitch. And now we only have our 5mm needles. And now put on your right needle stitch marker so that you know the beginning of the row. And now just make a second row of your ribbing. So the first stitch is always a knit stitch, and then just purl and then knit and purl. And make sure that the last stitch is a purl stitch, because it is an even number. In my case it's 66 stitches. From this point continue working your 1x1 rib until your desired length. So here's my ribbing, and it is 4 centimeters or 1.57 inches. And that matches my collar's height. And I like this length, so I'm going to start binding off. So here's the last stitch of the row. I'm making a purl stitch, taking off my stitch marker, and now we are ready to cast off our stitches. So make the knit stitch and then a purl stitch. And now we are keeping our working yarn facing us. And then we are going to take our left needle and take the 2 stitches through the back loop right here. And then we're going to purl these 2 through the back loop like this. Here we have it. And then the next stitch is a knit stitch. So we're making a knit stitch. And now, since the last stitch we've made is a knit stitch, we are going to take these 2 stitches on our left needle and make a knit stitch through the back loop with these 2 stitches. So we are making knit 2 together. And now here's the purl stitch, so we are making a purl stitch. And since we've made a purl stitch, now we're going to purl these 2 together through the back loop. So take your 2 stitches like this, wrap it around and purl them 2 together. The next one is a knit stitch, so you can see we are following our pattern, our 1x1 rib, and then we are making a knit 2 together through the back loop, just like so. And here's the purl. Let's do one more time. And now we are taking it through the back loop and making a purl 2 together. And here's how our bind off should look like. From this point, continue working your casting off, and I'll meet you in the end of the row. I only have my 2 stitches left on my left needle. Now let's finish it together. So I'm making a knit stitch and then knitting 2 together. And the last stitch is a purl stitch. So I'm making a purl stitch. And now I'm taking this stitch and sliding it like so. And now just cut off your yarn. I've already cut mine. And now just pull out this thread. Now we don't need our needles anymore. Take your tapestry needle and we're going to hide our ends. I usually like to see where's the next stitch, and then I'm going to imitate the next stitch by making a V shape here. Because my yarn is kind of fluffy, so it doesn't really matter, but you can see I've imitated the stitch right here. And now I can make a knot on the wrong side, just like so, and secure it. So now that I have a knot, I can hide my ends in the wrong side. I usually like to hide on the knit row. It is kind of easier to hide, just like that. And then you can go to another row, but it is not necessary, just to make sure. And this end we don't need it, so just cut it off. And here's how our bind off looks like. I wanted to hop in and quickly show you guys how my progress looks like so far. And also, if you were wondering how can you make this cute bag, I've got a tutorial right here for you. Click. Okay, so let's talk about this sweater. First of all, this length for me is just perfect. I like how you can tuck in this hem in your high-waisted bottoms, and also you can wear it loosely. And I also went ahead and made one puff sleeve with a little ribbing right here to make sure that it is perfect. And I really like how it turned out, so let me show you guys how to make it. To start making the sleeves, take your 7mm needles out. In this armhole, I currently have 43 stitches on my thread, and this underarm area is without any stitches. We're going to start off with taking our needle and find the center of this underarm area and start picking up some stitches until this point, where we'll start taking the stitches from this thread to our needle until the end. And from here we are going to pick up some stitches until the center of the underarm area. Since I've made the other sleeve, I know that I've picked up in total 12 stitches in this underarm, and I have 43 stitches on my thread, so in total I should have 55 stitches on my needle. So let's start with finding the center of underarm. I usually like to fold it in a half like this and take this spot as the center. Now we will find these V lines that are our knit rows, and we will try to use them as a guide to try and imitate the continuation of these V's while picking up these stitches. So here's the center. I'm going to pick up this stitch, and then I'm going to try and find the next one. So I've picked up 6 stitches on my right needle right here, and now I'm ready to take the stitches from the thread to my needle. From this point, continue taking all of the stitches from your thread to your needle, and I will meet you at this point right here. So here's the last stitch on the thread, and I'm picking it up on my right needle, and now I'm ready to pick up the stitches in my underarm area right here. Since I've picked up 6 stitches in the beginning, now I will have to make only 6 stitches right here. Here's the first one. Now the second one. I'm trying to find the third one. Just try to find the V's and follow them. It will make your underarm prettier. So I've picked up 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 2 left. Here's the 5th. And here's the 6th stitch. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. Now I'm going to put these stitches on my left needle. And before starting the first row, I really recommend you to go ahead and count all of the stitches. In my case, I will have to have 55 stitches on my needles, meaning 12 that I picked up in my underarm and 43 that I've got on my thread. And once you've counted them correctly, go ahead and cut off your thread. And now you can take it off. Now that we've taken out our thread, we're going to take our stitch marker and put it on our right needle to mark our beginning of the round. Now take your working yarn and we're going to start making our first knit stitch. Here's the stitch marker. I'm going to take and wrap it around with my yarn and make my first knit stitch. And then I'm making another one. And now I can secure and just tie a knot, or maybe even a double knot, just like that. And now you can continue working your knitting row. You can see that the sleeves are pretty easy to work. It's just a little bit hard to pick up the stitches in the beginning. And now you're just going to work your rows of knitting and working the length of your sleeves. And when you're out of stitches on your needle, just take another portion and put it in your left needle. And continue working your sleeve. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this first row is going to be a little bit uncomfy, and it's totally fine, especially the stitches that you've picked up. They're going to feel a little bit tight, and that's okay. Just try to work through this first row, and trust me, the rest is going to be much easier. So I'm currently in my underarm area near my stitch marker, and as you can see, I'm just continuing making my knit stitches, even though they can feel a little bit off and tight. Just trust the process and go straight to the end. And here's my stitch marker, so I'm starting my second row and just continue knitting and working the length of my sleeve. So from this point it's going to be quite repetitive. Just work your knitting rows until your desired length, and I'm going to work 43 rows, and I will meet you on my 44th row where I will start making decreases. I've knitted 43 rows for my sleeve, and now we're ready to move on to 44th row where I will start decreasing. So here's where I stopped. This is the last stitch of my 43rd row. I'm going to just knit it, put the stitch marker on my right needle, and now we're ready to move on to a decreasing 44th row. I'm going to knit two together, these two stitches. So I'm just going to, as if I'm knitting, wrap around the yarn and knit these two together. And now the next two stitches I'm going to do the same thing. Just knit two together, both of the stitches, as if you're knitting. And this is basically this row. We're just going to knit two together every two stitches. So here's the next pair. We're just going to insert our needle into both stitches and knit them. And that's basically the gist of this row. But keep in mind that we have 55 stitches, so in the end we will have one stitch left. And that stitch we're just going to knit it. So in total we'll have 28 stitches. So from this point continue working your decreasing row, just knit two together every two stitches, and I'll meet you in the end of the row. I've made it to the end of my 44th row, and I've got 3 stitches left on my left needle, and now I'm going to knit these two together, and then the last one I'm just going to knit without any decreases. So now in the end of this row, when you count all of the stitches, you have to have 28 stitches. And now just put your stitch marker to your right needle, and we're going to start our 45th row without any decreases. So just knit every stitch, just like that. And just knit all of the stitches until the end, and I will meet you near the stitch marker. One thing I wanted to mention, that at this point you can find that you have not so much stitches, and you can have the situation like me. So all of the stitches you can divide to 3 parts. So some of these stitches you will leave on your left needle and some on your right needle, but some of them, the last third portion, would be on your cord, and you will have these loops right here. And it is easier to knit this way than to divide them to only 2 needles. I'm at the end of my 45th row. I'm just going to knit it and then put the stitch marker on my right needle. And now we are ready to start our 46th row, which is a row of decrease. So we're just going to knit these two together, and the next stitch we're just going to knit without any decrease. And the next two we're just going to knit two together. And then take your next portion. So you can see I'm always dividing the number of stitches into 3 parts, like this. So I've made here knit two together, so now I'm going to just knit without any decrease, and the next two I'm going to knit two together. and then knit. So the pattern is knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit until the end of the row. So just continue working your decreases just like I said, and I will meet you near the end of the row. So I'm currently near the end of my 46th row. Here's my stitch marker, and I'm going to count the number of stitches that I have after the stitch marker, starting from this point. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. So I have 17 stitches and I've got 2 left. Now if I'm going to knit these 2 stitches without a decrease, I will have 19 stitches in total. But 19 is an odd number, and the end goal of this row is to have an even number. And that's why if I'm going to knit these 2 together, I will have 18 stitches. You can have any other number of stitches, but make sure that it is an even number. So now I'm just going to knit these 2 last stitches together and put my stitch marker on the right needle. And now we're ready to start our 47th row, which is a row without a decrease, but we will start taking our 5mm needles out. Here's my 5mm needle. Now I'm going to insert my needle like this, take my working yarn, and make my first knit stitch. And this row we're just going to knit without making any decreases. So you'll have on your right hand your 5mm needle and on your left 7mm. And just knit like that until the end of the row. So here's the last stitch of my 47th row, and I'm just going to knit it and take out my 7mm needles out. So we have successfully transferred all of the stitches to our 5mm needles, and in the end we should have 18 stitches. Now just divide all of your stitches into 3 parts. So 2 of them are on our needles and the third one is on our cord. Just like that, and take your stitch marker and put it on your right needle so that we know where is the beginning of our row. And now we're ready to start making our 48th row, which is a row where we'll start our 1x1 rib. So just start with knit 1, and then we're going to purl 1, and then knit 1, and then purl. And that's basically the gist of this row. And now you can see why we've made an even number, because we're making 1x1 rib. So it is essential to have an even number of stitches. So from this point just continue working your 1x1 rib. So knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 until the end of the row, and the last stitch should be a purl stitch, and you always start with a knit stitch. I've made 9 rows of 1x1 rib, and it is 4 centimeters or 1.6 inches. And I'm ready to move on to the 10th row, which is a casting off row. So I'm making my last purl stitch of my 9th row, putting on stitch marker, and now we're ready to cast off. So I'm making 1 knit stitch and then purl stitch, and then I'm going to take my left needle and insert into these 2 loops through the back loop, and then wrap it around and make a purl stitch. And now I'm moving on to a knit stitch. So I'm making a knit stitch, and then I'm taking my left needle, I'm inserting it like this, wrapping it around and making a knit stitch. Now I'm taking my next portion of yarn. So the next stitch is a purl stitch. I'm making a purl stitch, and then through the back loop I'm making a purl stitch, just like that. And the next one is knit stitch. I'm making a knit stitch, and then I'm moving on like this and making a knit stitch through the back loop. And the next one is purl. So I think you get the gist of it. We are casting off the same way as we did like in the ribbing before. And now a knit stitch, just like that. So continue working your casting off, and I'll meet you in the end of this row. So I've got my last purl stitch left, and I'm going to purl it. And I'm going to take this stitch, previous one, and do it like so. And I'm going to cut off my yarn, take out this needle, and then take your tapestry needle, and now we're going to hide this tail. So just look for the next purl row. You can see our thread right here, and we're going to imitate the next stitch, just making a V shape. Here's the half of my V, and now I'm going to take it back to this point, and it's going to imitate the stitch. And now we're going to secure our end. Just put it like that, and then pull through. Now we're going to hide our end tail. So I usually prefer hiding in the knit stitches. Just like that. You can go to another side. I think that's enough, and then cut off your yarn. And here's how our sleeve should look like. Okay, now that you have your finished knitted sweater, you can wear it as is, or you can start surface crocheting wavy lines with me. To start off, take your 5mm crochet hook and take your blue ball of yarn. Take your short end tail right here, and we're going to start making a slip knot. Make it across, and then take your hook and take it under and then over. And that's how we have a slip knot. Take it out, and now we're going to define where to start. I actually don't have quite a plan. I think I'm going to just freestyle it, so I'm going to just start in some corner, for example here near the armpit, and now take your slip knot and put it underneath your sweater. So I decided that I'm going to start about here. I'm just inserting my hook, and then I'm going to put my slip knot on that hook. You can see it right here. Here's the slip knot, and I'm just going to take it out. So here's our slip knot on our surface on our right side of the sweater, and we're going to start making the next stitch. I'm finding the next stitch right here. I'm inserting my hook, and underneath I'm going to put it on my hook this long tail of yarn. So this tail. Ignore the short tail, I'm putting the long tail right here, and I'm just going to find it and take it out on the right side of my sweater. Here it is. So now let's move on to the next stitch. I'm inserting my hook, and then underneath I'm putting the long tail on my hook, and then moving on to the next one, putting the long tail on my hook and taking it out. So here's how it looks like on the surface, and I'm going to show you guys how it looks underneath. So I'm moving on to the next stitch, just inserting like this, and on this side I'm going to put it on my crochet hook and take it out, just like so. And that's basically how you surface crochet. Just move one stitch at a time. I'll go ahead and surface crochet some wavy lines and get back to you with some updates. This is what my work looks like at the moment. I decided to give myself a little challenge and surface crochet without cutting the yarn all over the sweater. I don't know if I can do it yet, but I'll let you know in the future. When I started crocheting these curved lines, I didn't know if I would be able to fill the entire sweater space with one solid line. But later, during the process, I felt like even if I don't make it, I won't be upset. I happen to really enjoy this process. You start without knowing where you'll end up, even though you have an idea of what direction you want to go, but reality won't always be that way. I'll put pictures of finished sweaters front and back in case you want to repeat after me, but I would highly recommend trying to do it freestyle. It's more therapeutic than you might think. So as you can see, I started at this point and made a wavy line along this path. Then I stopped here. And at this point I decided to turn my sweater and continue crocheting the sleeve. And this is where I stopped. Now I'll have to figure out how to crochet wavy lines across the rest of the sweater and stop at the point where I started, which is here. I currently finished all of the sweater except for the right sleeve, as you can see, and here's where I stopped. My plan is to fill up this side and then turn to this side, and then somehow to make a curved line and stop right here. This is the starting point. I've made wavy lines all over my sweater, and this is where I stopped. And now I'm going to show you guys how do I connect with the starting point and how to finish this project. So my plan is to make a curvy line and stop at this point. So let's crochet together. As you can see, my last stitch has overlapped the first stitch. This is where I'm stopping. Now just cut off your yarn. And now from this side, take out your thread right here. And now take your tapestry needle and we're going to use it to hide our yarn. Now just insert into the starting point here. And now turn to the other side. And you can see on the side we'll have 2 threads. And we're going to make a double knot. And then we're going to weave in our ends. I will hide them underneath my blue yarn, just like that. And then cut off your yarn. And don't forget to hide the rest of your ends.